Okay, there have been conversations that focus on the school to prison pipeline. What are your personal thoughts on this, and what are some similarities and bridging factors between the school to prison system?
I can definitely understand how you know how there's that conversation happening or those thoughts happening out there. I can understand how some people think like that because I remember before I was at high school age, I remember there was high schools that had also government funding for various vocational programs. I remember one of the high schools that I was interested in going to, they had a mechanic program there, amongst others. But the mechanic program really stood out to me because as a young boy, I would take my toys and take things apart. So I was very interested in how things work. That was that kind of, I had that kind of mindset. Um, so I'd really, like, I was looking forward to getting into high school to, join those kind of programs. Before I could start high school, there was cutbacks that affected those things. I've heard my generation referred to as the Mike Harris kids because during Mike Harris's time, there was a lot of cutbacks that affected schools, affected um, affected funding for after school programs within the what would be considered the low income communities. Um, One thing that I remember, all of our community centers, because I'm from these low income communities, you know, within the inner city in Toronto. One thing I see in I remember going to our community centers, and there was individuals who would be there in the evening or the afternoon. I remember people doing homework with people. I remember sports. I remember arts. I remember the community center being a really interesting place to go after school, and it was so positive. The vibe was great. But then those things were gone. And then policing was, there was a noticeable increase in police within our neighborhoods. So it's no wonder that there's that thought process about school to prison pipeline. I'm sure there's some statistics that can support that. If you ask me, I would say, what was the purpose of taking those things away? And who did that benefit? Because it doesn't seem like it benefited those communities and those schools
Hmm.
and that generation of children.
What are some things you have noticed about the youth that are caught up within the system compared to yourself and some older individuals?
What I've what I've paid attention to and noticed about those that are, let's just say, 10 years younger than me and beyond, uh, a lot of the younger individuals, it seems like they're just very discouraged. They don't believe that there's any other way because, I mean, there is no, there's very little to no systems that support them developing the understanding that there is other options for them. I mean, it almost seems like within their own communities, with all the cutbacks, that you know there's a war waged against them. I remember being in the prison yard in one medium security institution, and as I was enjoying the evening, there was some other prisoners that were close by having a conversation, and there was a specific individual who was, I'd probably say, around maybe 10 years younger than me or a little bit more. it was his birthday as I was overhearing the conversation, not eavesdropping on purpose, but I just overheard the conversation. And he was reminiscing about a time where he was with his best friend, as he said, and they both shared the same birthday. And they were in their community, wherever that is, and on that specific birthday that they were spending together, they were talking amongst themselves, as he recalls, about how many years did they think they would live. Unfortunately, his friend had lost his life at a young age. So that, I hope, gives gives anyone who's hearing this an understanding of, how young people feel, out there in their own communities and in the prison system. They don't really see much of a future for themselves. They generally feel like outsiders, like it's a them and us existence. It's very understanding, why they would think like that with everything that's been happening within their communities and what the government supports and chooses not to support.
Okay. With the escalating violence that is going on in our communities, what are some suggestions you might have for community members? How can we collaborate to tackle this ongoing issue?
Well, first of all, people outside of the community have to be even interested in collaborating, have to be even interested in making a change and contributing to that change or that awareness that there needs to be a change. Individuals outside of the at-risk community, with the understanding that the issues that face those communities trickle into their own communities and impacts their own communities in a negative way. The issues that face those communities contribute to statistics being used to funnel more taxpayers' dollars into policing rather than programs that would benefit, the community at large. Even individuals within the public sector, people just have to actually care. And the ones who are profiting from all those cutbacks, because, if they're not spending the money there in those communities, where are they spending it? Whose pocket's getting lined? Who's getting the bonuses? I know that some communities, where they cut back from some, they invest a little bit into others. And that's the political game, right? It's about support. But I myself, I really don't know what I would do. I never once in my mind thought that, I would want to be a politician or someone that was responsible for a lot of people. But I do know that the things that has been being done up to this point, it's clear that that's not something that works for the communities that are affected by it. And the communities as a byproduct of that effect on the at-risk communities that are also affected. So we obviously need to go in the opposite direction, and there needs to be those things that were stripped from those communities and stripped from, the youth. It needs to be put back, and there needs to be a lot more. So we need to support, we need to support programs that, invest into the communities, invest into the future of the youth of the communities. Because there is a lot of passion, within these communities. And it is clear because we have had a lot of individuals who come out of these situations and, some way with, some support have made it out of these situations and have shined like the sun. So imagine how much more if the structures that were stripped from these areas were put back there. And also, those things were increased to be more dynamic. Imagine what a better place our communities would be overall. I think about the promises that were even made to some individuals about post-secondary. I remember a time where I looked at the TV and all I was seeing is, advertisements for going to college and university. I mean, you have a whole generation of people who went to college and university on those promises that they were going to be guaranteed jobs, and those jobs that they were supposed to be guaranteed, they came out of college or university to not have those jobs. They have the accolade now for, making it through the college or the university, but they're not working within their field. And they're strapped with debt that, some of them are taking decades to pay. And, as a result of that, you have some adults that, but for that situation, are still living in their parents' homes when they would rather not. So I just think everyone needs to be aware and needs to care and needs to push for the kind of things that curb, violence, gun violence, crime, by giving opportunity to those who might be at risk of going down those paths. That's just my thoughts.
Can you share with us a bit more about the Stephen Harper bill that was introduced and how it impacted the welfare of prisoners?
Well, the impact on prisoners starts in the community, because a lot of the cutbacks in the community that affected families, affected children, affected communities, affected, at-risk young people who were at a risk of, being food insecure, and, people who have parents that have a hard time, getting jobs out there, and also taking care of their children. And, if they're out there having to hustle, it puts the children more at risk because they're not getting what they need, to be, balanced young people out there as they're growing up. So with a lot of imbalanced young people out there, they make various decisions. They are more susceptible to be attracted to, certain subcultures, certain lifestyles out there. So that contributes to a lot of young people, coming into contact with the police, having interactions with the police, and also getting charged for various things. So it starts in the community, and then when these individuals come into the prisons, the cuts in the prison system affects prisoners. So whether it's some specific kinds of programming that are vocational in their, in their design, designed to, give individuals some skills while they're in, because you have a lot of young people that come into the prison system, or let's just say when they enter the jail system, which would be the detention centers where you go to court and await the outcome of the charges. Some individuals can sit in the detention center for 2, 3, and there's been cases where individuals have sat 4 to 5 years because of hung juries or mistrials, and they don't have they can't make surety, or because of whatever they decide in the courts, they don't want to give them bail. So now you have an individual spending all this time in pre-sentence custody where there are no programs, where there is no, let's just say the person doesn't have a high school education. There is no structure to give them the high school education. They're not learning anything. They're just sitting around being a prisoner. So that's a lot of years that, the cutbacks that have affected the detention centers by taking away those programs that used to be in the detention centers that used to be able to give individuals, say, even their education while they're in detention centers. Those things are no longer there. So now you have those years that those individuals spend in the detention center, and then let's just say they get time. They get 2 years or more. That's a federal sentence. So now they are on their way down to the penitentiary. So when they arrive at the penitentiary, the one thing that every prisoner has, that's a part of the number one thing that's a part of their correctional plan, if they don't have a high school diploma or high school education, immediately that's put as a part of your correctional plan. So you're streamlined into school, and they kind of have like a fast track program that gives you your high school diploma. And then from there, you have to maintain a prison job, which, nowadays is just sweeping the floor. You might work in the kitchen where, you just basically clean pots, pans, and so on. But what I understand from a lot of prisoners that have been in, or, when I started my federal sentence, what I understand from prisoners that have been in, at that point, 20 years or more, they explained to me that there used to be woodworking and various vocational programs that taught skills that an individual would, after so many years of doing their time while doing those programs, you get your certification. You would even be able to put your hours that some of these trades require, and you would leave the prison system with something, something that can help you in the community, because their own statistics say that if people are have these kind of skills or are able to be employed, they're at a very, very low risk of reoffending, and the stats show. So once these cutbacks affected these things, and this is over years, that the prison system has been stripping away the things that actually help to, if you want to use the word, rehabilitate individuals, and give individuals skills so that when they come out of the prison system, they're better than when they went in. Over the decades, they've been stripping these things away from the prison. The Stephen Harper bill, they cut back a lot of the finances. For instance, prisoners made a certain amount of money working in the prison jobs, right? It wasn't a lot. I mean, if you were behaved, then you made your way to a level A pay, which is the top level pay of your basic employment. At that point, you'd probably get like $60 something every 2 weeks. So just over $100 a month. And that would supplement, things that you would need. Maybe you buy some vitamins on Canteen. Maybe you would buy a little bit of extra food Um, maybe you might even sign out a little bit of money to send home to purchase a holiday gift for a child that you have outside. Now, there's also a system within CSC, a factory system that makes products for not only for CSC but for the military, and this is a for-profit company. It's called Corcan. So Corcan is the factory, and every prison that's I guess nowadays at the medium level and down into the minimum security level, they have a factory that makes various items. One of the prisons that I was in had a factory that made bunk bed. Lockers, like the kinds you would see in school, or the kinds that our military would have in their barracks to keep their equipment. Even gun lockers for the military. We made all of these things. I worked in Corcan for quite some years, and Corcan had what was called an incentive pay. So above the basic pay, you would get extra income, because now you're working in a factory that's for profit. Anything shy of that would kind of be like slave labor, right? So if you were at the highest level of incentive pay, along with your basic pay for having a job within the institution, a prisoner could make around like $400 a month, and that did a lot for a lot of individuals' mental health, because they were able to send home a couple $100s a month to the mothers of their children or their wife, or it was a matter of pride to be able to do that, right? But with the cutbacks, with that bill that Stephen Harper passed, it took away incentive pay from Corcan. The basic level pay was cut completely in half. So over all of these years that prisoners have been working within the prison system, and the inflation has caused goods to go up. Even the canteen items that we purchase through the canteen stores within the prison system, those items have gone up, and the pay has never gone up. In fact, now it's gone down. So that has created a lot of issues within the prison system amongst prisoners, because now it's created this kind of environment now where individuals are more likely to be more violent, trying to take things from each other. There's more activity within the prison system in relation to introduction of contraband for profit. It creates contributes to the subculture within the prison system. But we don't see any changes towards investment into the prison system to kind of change the direction that prison is going in Canada, because it's becoming more of just a lockdown, punitive kind of system, as opposed to this label that we tout within CSC, that they're for rehabilitation, integration, and all this. When you're a prisoner and you've served a lot of years, you start to realize and recognize that it's not that, and you have to just kind of keep your head down, try not to get in trouble, and at some point you'll get out of the prison. But the environment within prison is a lot tougher now, and people are having a lot more difficulty making their way down in security because of various reasons. I mean, even now, some individuals try to do what we call your own time, which is mind your own business, keep your head down, and just cascade down through the system to get out. But as I mentioned earlier, prisons become more, a lot more volatile, a lot more violent. So it's tougher now than ever before. So it's had a serious impact on the lives of prisoners, and that being a negative impact on the lives of prisoners within prison, within CSC.
Okay, so could you touch on the quality of the academic programs in the prisons and how they may affect individuals in the long run?
Well, I will say the academic programs that are available, the schools that are within the prison system, if an individual applies themselves and takes advantage of the system, they can get their high school diploma. There are some post-secondary courses that can be taken, but you're limited based on the security level of the prison that you're in, because some things that you might want to take, let's just say you want to take chemistry, for instance, you want to be a chemist. You're limited as to what you can do as far as experiments and so on, because in prison, security trumps everything. So security in itself can be used as a tool to limit prisoners' ability to gain knowledge and gain these accolades in the post-secondary system. But there are a lot of courses that an individual can apply themselves and acquire. So, but just like in the school system out in the community, individuals have varying levels of ability to to be successful in some of these courses by themselves. Because when you take in post-secondary within the prison system, you are doing it by mail, and you're doing it correspondence wise, right? So that means that you have limited assistance from any teacher or any professor. So if an individual isn't equipped and motivated to accomplish something like that, then they're at a disadvantage. So there are a lot of individuals within the prison system that are at a disadvantage and are kind of discouraged from even trying to go down that road. But the structure is here. I mean, if you try to make an argument, against CSC when it comes to their school systems and their access to post-secondary, I mean, they can put up a good argument because the system is here. But there could be more. I mean, it could be a little more diverse to assist the prisoners that have varying abilities. I mean, had there been the trades, if the trades were still in the prison, some individuals would excel at those things. As we know in the community, there's some individuals that are a little more tactile, and some individuals a little more cerebral. So I think it would benefit prisoners if the educational system was a lot more dynamic within the prison system and a little more broad as to what it offers to prisoners.
So how have the cutbacks of programming, or has the cutbacks of programming benefited certain individuals in CSC?
Sorry, read that again.
So how have the cutbacks of programming, I guess, within CSC benefited certain individuals within CSC? So like the prison guards and stuff. So how have the cutbacks and I guess the minimization of certain programs, how has it benefited the CSC employees and workers and whatnot?
Well, what I'm witnessing is it seems like the motto is work smarter, not harder. And to break that down, it seems like it's do the absolute minimum, to get through your work day and get paid. So the cutbacks have definitely affected the staffers in a way that's in line with that, with that new culture, because we're seeing less volunteering within the prison system. So less programs, or now you got programs that are kind of merged into one kind of hybrid program, as opposed to it being broken down into several different programs. I don't see where, being a prisoner myself, I don't see where the cutbacks have really positively affected prisoners. I think when it comes to the things that prisoners had access to or were able to utilize that are now cut back, I think that benefits the officers and the staffers more than anything. I mean, now you see officers in the control tower where they push all the buttons to open all the door. I mean, you see them sitting there all day on their phones playing video games or on social media, and if you call out to them to push the button to say open your cell door or whatever you're supposed to ask them to do, you get this attitude from them as if you're asking them to do something that they shouldn't be doing, or you're telling them, there's this attitude now as if we're telling them what to do, and this is like a whole new culture. This is a whole new culture amongst these officers, and now when I even ask them to do something like that, I just say, excuse me, pardon me, I didn't mean to interrupt your video game or your social media scroll there, but would you mind opening my cell door, please? Yeah, but the cutbacks have benefited the staffers more than it has benefited prisoners. That's for sure.
Okay, so tell us more about the farming programs and how it contributed to the welfare of prisoners.
So before they cut the farming program, the farms actually used to support the prison. So as far as food supplies and stuff like that, I mean, we used to get our milk from the farms that prisoners worked in. We used to get our eggs from the farms that prisoners worked in, amongst other things. And I'm sure it was great for a lot of prisoners' mental health to work with the animals and so on, and gave a lot of prisoners a sense of purpose. But the farm system really was in the minimum security institution, the camps, and we noticed the impact on prisons even at the medium and the max level once they cut the farm program, because that milk, those eggs, those things that we used to receive, they changed. So now taxpayers' dollars go to some company, usually an American company, to supply the goods, and as far as our food and our powdered milk now and so on. So I don't think that those things even were good for Canadians, much less the prisoners and the prison system. But now it's back in some capacity, but nothing like what it used to be.
So when the funding cutbacks were in place, how did it affect the farming programs, and how did it affect the health of prisoners?
I'm gonna probably have to call you back. This phone's gonna cut in like a minute.
Okay. Okay, so when the funding cutbacks were in place, how did it affect the farming programs, and how did it affect the health of prisoners?
Well, I want to say we we're feeling the impact um, and the cutbacks when it comes to the quality of food that that we're served in the prison. With all of those cutbacks and the farming program being cut all the way back, now we get these cook chill food, like I said earlier, powdered milk and so on, and the quality or the nutrition value of the food, it's definitely gone down by a considerable percentage. I'm noticing, younger prisoners now, having a lot more health issues, having to go to healthcare, taking medication for various health issues. You know, um, even being able to kind of hold weight on their body, their natural weight, they're dropping weight. So I'd say that it's definitely negatively affected the health and even the mental health of prisoners by and large. I know there's statistics out there. I mean, every incident that affects a prisoner's mental health that's recorded, all the information's there, all the stats are there. I think if anyone is interested or has any kind of concern to look into it and maybe raise awareness or push for, a more positive direction within the prison that's more conducive to that rehabilitation, to that healthy person being reintegrated into the community. I think we have to go in the opposite direction of, where CSE has been heading or is heading.
Okay. Could you talk more about the annual socials and how it was before versus now?
Well, I have a family. Um, I have two sons and an amazing wife, who's very supportive. When I was incarcerated, uh, our son at the time, we only had one son. He was just over a month old, or just around a month old. Um, when I came down to the prison system, when I came down to CSC and I started my federal sentence, I learned about the visitation programs that were going on within CSC at that time. At the time, we had touch visits. So if your family comes up for a day visit, you can spend up to 6 hours together in a room where there's tables and, they had like a TV there that, you can play movies for the kids. There's kids' toys in there. There's books and, there's board games and so on. So a family could sit at the table that they're at together and play board games or read together. There's also private family visits. Private family visits are what some people know as trailer visits. So it's an opportunity to spend a few days with your family. And it's great if you have young children because that helps to, support your relationship with them so that you don't become estranged. It's great for the mental health of the family as a whole. It's been great for my family. I go to PFVs as often as I am allowed to. So it's wonderful. And then they have something that they call socials. So a social, it's basically a day of a large socialized visit where it, can be likened to like a picnic at a community gathering or something. So it would be set up in the gymnasium and we'd have access to the prison yard and your family comes in and, at that time, the prisoners would make food. We'd get access to the kitchen, and we'd be able to make food for the families that are coming in, and um, be able to have access to the yard, be able to run around with your children and play, play soccer or shoot some hoops, and all the kids would be able to interact, and it was a real positive thing because for a prisoner, you can spend that time with your children, and you can kind of see them interacting with other children, and it's something that you can look at and be motivated, um, to make some changes in your life, as you see your children there, and think about what you're missing out on and what your goals are, when it comes to your family. It's a huge positive. So before I started my federal sentence, I understand that there used to be a lot more socials, but when I started my federal sentence, they had cut away a lot of the socials. I mean, there used to be around, what I understood was 4 or 5 of them a year, maybe even 6. But by the time I started my federal sentence, there was only 2. You'd have one in the summer and one in the winter, which would be around the holiday time. So even cutting those things away was, in a way, making it, giving the officers less work, because I mean, it's something that they had to supervise. It's something that had to be organized, and for that day that a social was happening, there would be an adjustment in the day-to-day runnings of the prison. So, I mean, and also you had, you do have your issues where some people do abuse that privilege. I tried to introduce things into the prison, so I mean, over time, I guess it's been easy for them to utilize that, that tool that they have as far as security. It's to make a safer and more secure prison, and they've used those tools to cut away socials from the prison. So, for someone who has a family and is interested in spending a lot of time with their children, and definitely the cutbacks of those visitation programs have definitely affected, the prisoners and their families, and the overall mental health and well-being of the family unit as a whole. Because on top of the fact that you're in prison, say someone was in over a period of time of some years, you and your children and your family kind of live through those cutbacks. Cutting those programs away from the system. So what your children would look forward to, now they no longer have, and what you would look forward to, you no longer have, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I think we need to head back in the other direction and kind of increase those things and have more of those things, because it used to be that is something that they promoted and supported because it was in line with your what might be in your correctional plan as far as maintaining, developing and maintaining positive community supports. And what's more positive for you than if you have a family, and to work on that relationship and work on being a better dad or a better husband, a better partner, by spending that time. Because as you sit down inside a prison as a prisoner, that's one thing you do have. You have a lot of time and a lot less distractions to work on yourself. And what better way for a person to have that growth than for the prison system, to support that growth, support those, support that rehabilitation, support those relationships being maintained. Overall, it helps that person be a better individual than when they came in. Because that's one thing that's for sure. I mean, majority of prisoners, I want to say 90% of prisoners are going to be released back in the community. So you want something that supports a better person coming back into the community than a person with more trauma and issues than when they came in.
Okay, so question 7 is a two-part question. It says, how has the system turned from a rehabilitative model to a punitive one? And how will this affect the welfare of society in the long run?
Well, CSC, with everything that have been removed from CSC that has been positive for individuals overall, from the ability to spend time with their families, from the ability for an individual to work and receive, I guess, what we might call a fair pay for, working a job in the prison system, especially one that's a for-profit company. Um, the cutbacks in, the quality of the food that nourishes the individual that's in prison, the cutbacks of the programming that helps for the person to develop themselves socially. The limitations that are placed on individuals who might be interested in, some form of post-secondary or higher education. The cutbacks in vocational programming. The very fact that an individual can spend, 20 years within a prison system and come out of the prison system, with, the fact that they could come out of the system, far better than what, they would come out as currently. That in itself is a shame, because this is Canada, and Canada has a reputation all around the world, for being a specific kind of nation, but when you find yourself in the prison system and you're struggling to utilize time to make the most, but it seems like the system itself is fighting against you and putting a strain on you to affect you in not making those positive changes, but to kind of have you stuck as a prisoner. That in itself shows that the system's moving in the wrong direction if it's meant to be a rehabilitative and a supportive process. When it comes to a person becoming someone better on the way out than they were when they came in. So, the statistics can show all the complaints that prisoners put in to the complaint system. All the information is there. But at the end of the day, the community has to care. The community has to understand how someone coming out of prison, a lot more traumatized, with, say, more anger than when they went in, that's not really a good recipe for any community, because no community now is safe from, any kind of crimes. It happens everywhere. I see on the news where when something happens in some neighborhoods, some people that are being interviewed, they say stuff like, I can't believe this is happening in my neighborhood. No neighborhood is exempt, no community is exempt from the issues of, the cutbacks in the community, the things that come from those things, the issues of the cutbacks within the system that, these individuals who, find themselves in the system, come back out with. There is no I would say there's no other option other than to, really actually care if you're in the community and, make yourself aware of, how the system can work better. Because if it doesn't work better, the negative effects will be seen and felt within the community. I remember when the late Doug Ford made a comment when it came to supporting programs that would help, at-risk communities and at-risk individuals in the communities out there. He said, quote, that he is not supporting any hug a thug programs. And myself, I immediately thought of the young children that these, that this investment would help within this community. But to me, I took that as, he views those young children as thugs, even before any of them has done anything, that would get them in trouble with the law. So if our own community leaders or government leaders feel that way about the infants that grow up in the at-risk community, it's no wonder that they're continuing all these cutbacks. And, we're just out of sight, out of mind here in the prison. So, it's just continuing to get worse. I would like to see, awareness raised and people be concerned, because the concern for individuals in the prison is concern for yourself and your own community. That's my thoughts on that.